filing in. Here's our crew. Got Mr. Satin, Mr. Weemel's hanging out. Oh yeah. The Nikon's got quite the booth here. What it looks like behind the scenes. Insane. Cool stage set up here. Got the FX2 here. One thing I noticed is the ports. There's no door for the ports here, which is kind of strange, I thought.
I was a photographer and, oh, it was inspired when my dad showed it to me, whatever. No. None of that.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay, and I hope you liked that sample video that was all shot with the Nikon Z5 Mark II and the 24 to 200 millimeter lens, and a little bit of the video was shot with the 50 millimeter f1.4 lens. So this is going to be more of a real-world user experience style review, so I'm going to show you what this camera can do like in the real world with me using both of these lenses for both photo and video. So that video that you did just watch was all shot in 10-bit 422 SDR mode. Now what SDR mode means is it's kind of like shooting JPEG if you're shooting photos, as opposed to shooting raw quality when taking photos. So N-Log is a more advanced video format and it requires you to post-process the video footage, but I just wanted to let you know that that footage you just watched, like in the beginning, none of that was N-Log. That's like straight off the camera. So I really wanted to show you what this can do like straight off the camera for those, you know, newer to photography and stuff, because this is one of the best value full frame cameras on the market today, in my opinion. The build quality on the Z5 Mark II is excellent, and for the price point of approximately $1,700, it packs incredible power and it has a tremendous feature set. I mean, honestly, if I was in the market for a new camera, full frame, I would absolutely consider this. The alternatives for competition-wise out there, you have the Canon R8, which is a great full frame camera as well, but it doesn't have near the feature set that this camera does. And then on the Sony side of things, you have the Sony a7C II, which I personally own and love. This is also an excellent option. The ergonomics on the Sony are not as good as the Nikon, though, as you could see. Much more limited as far as buttons and stuff go. But the Sony a7C II does pack a little more power in a couple of areas, such as autofocus technology, S and Q mode, so you can get slow motion and fast motion in camera. So again, the Sony has a little bit more technology in that regard. It has a better sensor, 33 megapixel versus 24 megapixel. And the sensor on the Sony also has a little bit more dynamic range, so it has a little bit better high ISO abilities and things like that. But the Sony is significantly more. It cost almost $500 more than this Nikon Z5 II. So again, value for the dollar. The Z5 II, in my opinion, beats it in that regard. But it is a larger camera body, so, you know, it just depends on what you guys are looking for and so forth. But since I own this camera and I love this camera, I just wanted to do a quick comparison there. So when compared to the Z6 III, just in case you're in the market and you're kind of debating between the two cameras, the Z6 III does have a more advanced stacked sensor, and it's a 6K video camera, whereas the Z5 II is only a 4K video camera. So that's like the biggest difference. Now the camera body is also different on the Z6 III. It's got like a screen on the top, and it has a CF Express card slot and a SD card slot, whereas the Z5 II just has dual SD card slots. So there's little things like that that are just a little bit different. The viewfinder is a little bit higher resolution on the Z6 III. So it's a little bit more of a premium prosumer grade camera, as opposed to this being more of a like hardcore enthusiast camera, I would say, as opposed to prosumer, if that, you know, means anything to you. So again, doing professional work, you might want to lean more towards the Z6 III, but this could absolutely do professional work as well. It's just lacking some of those more advanced features, you know, and the Z6 III obviously is quite a bit more money. It's more around the A7C II price point. All right, so I just wanted to give a big thanks to BH Photo Video for allowing me to borrow this gear. They loaned it to me, which was awesome. So I really appreciate that. It allowed me to make this content for you, and it allowed me to go down to the city with all this cool gear and learn it, have fun with it, and stuff like that. So again, huge shout out to BH Photo Video. So if you guys are shopping for cameras and stuff like that, be sure to check out BH Photo Video. I will have it linked below in the description area, and that's where I buy most of my gear, and a lot of my friends buy their stuff there as well. They also offer a creator's discount, so if you're a creator, you can apply for that and you can get discounts on a lot of gear and stuff like that, which is quite cool that they offer that. And they also offer the Paybu credit card, which I signed up for, because if you use the Paybu credit card, you actually don't have to pay tax. So when you're buying like an expensive camera system like this, or even more expensive, you can save tax if you put it on the credit card and then just pay it off. You're going to save yourself hundreds of dollars. So really cool that BH offers that as well. So anyways, thanks again to BH, and let's get on with this video. So just going around the camera body here, we have a ton of physical buttons and awesome ergonomics. I mean, just look at this grip. It's really nice. It's got a just all the buttons are really high quality. Like, they have good feedback. They push in really far. So even if you're wearing gloves and stuff, it's not going to be an issue. You have a nice mode dial here with very good tactile feedback. The camera has awesome auto mode, so if you're like a total beginner, you can just leave this in auto, like as you get used to the camera, and it's going to do a fantastic job for you in like 90% of the situations. As you get better, of course, you can move on to the more advanced modes and really harness the full power of this camera. But again, just straight out of the box, this works incredibly well in full auto mode. And as far as the physical buttons go, we have just buttons for everything. We have drive modes here, so if you want to do self-timer or continuous shooting, you know, for sports and things like that, there's just a button right there for it. You have a nice toggle switch here to go between photo and video modes. You got the AF on button here, which is nice to just activate autofocus if you're a back focus button type user. The shutter button you can also use. It's a two-stage button, so if you press it lightly, it will focus for you. When you press it all the way, it will actually take the photo. Now to record video, you have a record button here for that purpose. So you can customize the camera in a lot of different ways though if you want, so you can move things around and use some of these buttons for other things if you like. But I really like how it has the exposure comp button here, the ISO button, so you can easily control that. It's got a nice command dial here with excellent feedback. It's got another sub command dial here on the grip. Again, the feedback on these buttons feels great. It's got a directional pad here, which is nice for navigating through the menus. It also has the joystick, which I really enjoy using. When I have a small focus point on the screen, I use the joystick to move it around when I need to do that. Every once in a while, the camera doesn't pick what you want if you have it in wide area mode, so you can limit the autofocus area to a smaller focus point and then move it around with the joystick to just dial it in. And I like using that method. It also has, you know, the I menu here, which is like a shortcut to a quick menu for just getting to specific settings quickly, like most commonly used settings and stuff like that. And then it's got, of course, the menu buttons and playback button and so forth. Now, looking at it from the side, just to get a better look at how deep this grip is, and you can see just the notch here for your finger. It's very nice. Feels great in the hands. So inside here, you got dual SD card slots. Now they're UHS 2 compatible card slots, which means they'll handle fast cards like this, the V90 cards, which is what I use. So when continuously shooting, it will be able to write to the cards very fast, so the buffer won't fill up. If the buffer fills up, the continuous shooting will slow way down. So if you're shooting at like 15 frames per second, for example, once that buffer on the camera fills up, it then has to write to the card, and that's where the card write speed comes into play. So the faster that the card can write and read, you know, the faster you can offload the photos onto your computer, and the faster it can clear the buffer on the camera. So dual UHS 2 card slots is very nice. Now, you can't dual record video to the both slots at the same time, but you can dual record photos for backup purposes. So that's cool that you can do photos backup wise, but you can't do video dual recording, just so you guys are aware. One thing I just wanted to point out is I don't like how these make noise. That is one negative to this style. But anyways, looking at the side here, we got these nice rubber doors, very good weather sealing on these doors. And you got the microphone and headphone jack there. And the way that these like snap in, like no water is getting in there, that is for sure. Now you have a USB-C port here and a micro HDMI port. So this is for charging the battery, and also you can stream via the USB, so you can hook it up to your computer and it'll act as like a camera for you, which is quite nice. And then over here we have the nice LCD screen here, which is closed right now, but if we open it up, so it's a 3.2 inch, 2.1 million dot screen, and the screen goes very bright, so you can see it outside, and you can adjust the brightness in the camera and make it way brighter if you need to as well. So I really like this screen. It is definitely better than the screen on the Sony cameras, just to let you guys know. So if you're on the fence there, this screen is definitely better. And same thing with the viewfinder. This is a really nice viewfinder, and it's better than the Sony a7C II viewfinder, but you know, the camera is much smaller, so they had to make sacrifices there on the Sony in that regard. But I really like this viewfinder. Looking through it, I used it. It does have a little bit of lag. You know, sometimes it's not like the fastest readout. So like when you're panning and stuff, you will see just a little bit of lag depending on what you're up to. I did notice that, but overall it worked fantastic. You also have a button here, which is quite nice. So you can toggle between just using the viewfinder, just using the LCD screen or monitor, as Nikon calls it, or you can have it set so it'll switch between the two. Now, the reason why I mention that is because there's like a sensor up here on the top, and I noticed that when I had the camera like close to my body, it was tripping this sensor and engaging the electronic viewfinder when I wanted to use the LCD screen and have it close to my chest like this. So you could just hit this button to toggle and make it so it's monitor only, for example, and then it won't trip the viewfinder, which is nice. It's just very convenient to have that button right there for that purpose. So looking at the front here, we have this really nice full frame sensor. It's approximately 24.5 megapixel, which is lower resolution like than the Sony and the Z7s and things like that. But 24 is quite a bit, and it's enough to print pretty large. So you're just kind of limiting, you know, the cropping, like how much you can crop in on a photo. But I believe 24 megapixel is more than enough, and you'll see in the sample photos in a minute that it didn't really affect anything real world wise. It does affect things though if you want to crop in a lot, or if you want to print like gigantic. if you're going to print like, 11 by 14, for example, you're not going to have a problem with 24 megapixel. Totally fine. All right, guys, so I just want to attach one of these lenses. So this is the 24-200, and you can see this lens is really well made. It's got nice weather sealing on it. It actually has VR as well, which is vibration reduction, which is very important when using a telephoto zoom. So at 200 millimeter, you really do need that stabilization. And it also allows you to handhold the camera at slower shutter speeds when you have that. So you can see this lens zooms quite a bit. I'm going to take the lens hood off here. Now this lens has a 67 millimeter filter thread on the front. It's got a nice lens hood, and this is what it looks like. So again, just zooming it out, you can see how much it grows. It also has a lock switch on the lens, so it won't zoom on you if you have it locked like that, which is nice, especially when you pull it out of the camera bag. Sometimes the lens will like zoom, when you try to pull it out. So I like that it has that lock there. I'm going to take that off for a minute. So I just wanted to show you quickly when you turn this on what the screen looks like. So you have a lot of information displayed there, and if you hit the display button here, it'll cycle through different screens, and you can have it set up for all these different modes here. You can also limit what the screen shows you, so if you don't want it to have like 5 different options, you could limit it. But I like having the histogram there, so you can enable that and have the histogram if you want. It also has waveforms for video, which is awesome. I'm in full auto mode right now, so let me just change that to aperture priority. Now when I hit the I menu here, I just wanted to show you that. This is that sub menu that I mentioned earlier, which is quite nice for quick settings, and you can custom configure this if you want to put your favorite settings in there. Now when we go into the menu here, we have an extremely in-depth menu system with tons of controls, features, and customization in here. So it is a little bit daunting of a menu just because there is so much information in here. So I would recommend if you need to find something, you could even just look in the manual. You could also check out my beginner's guide, which will be coming out shortly, where I'm going to go through the menu. I'm not going to cover every item in the menu, but I will go through it a lot more than I am in this video. I just wanted to show you quickly what the menu system looks like here. So you have your photo shooting menu here. You got your video shooting menu. And then here you have your custom menu settings. So this is where like all the other features kind of are. So you would think that all the features for video would be in the video area, but that's not the case. You have to go into here to get into like focus modes and things like that for video. If I go over, scroll down here, you can see there's another option for video. And for example, if you go in there, now you have all these other options for video, and it just cascades over to the right to give you even more control. So this is where you can control your autofocus speed and autofocus tracking sensitivity for video. Just as an example, this camera is highly customizable, and you could really dial in things like autofocus transition speed and stuff like that, which is extremely powerful. You got your playback menu. This is where your setup menu is. So again, you can see monitor brightness there. I have it at +3. You can jack that up even higher if you want to. Now here's your network area. This is where you can go and you can set up your Bluetooth controls and connecting to your smart device and stuff like that. Now down here is a My Menu area, which is awesome that they have that. So once you go into the menu and you find those hard to find features, like whatever it may be, like autofocus transition speed, for example, you can add that to your My Menu area so you don't have to drill down so deep into the menu, in the future when you need to find those settings. So again, once you find them, be sure to add them to the My Menu, and then they'll be there for your convenience when you need to find them more quickly. So that's just a basic overview of the camera body, menu system, and stuff like that. But as you can see here in my hands, this just feels great. The way the camera feels. You can get your thumb like right here, your fingers right on the shutter button. You have like very good ergonomics, can handhold even with this heavy lens. This lens is like 1.5 pounds. The camera body's like 1.5 pounds. So this is about a 3-pound package in my hand, and you can easily hold it with one hand. But of course, when you're actually using it, I would hold it like this to support the lens as well. But I just love the ergonomics of this camera. This lens also has this customizable control ring here, which is quite nice. And the zoom feels pretty good. It's a little bit stiff, but not crazy stiff. And this will loosen over time with use. But 24-200 is a crazy awesome range. Here's what the shutter sounds like. for those people wondering. So the shutter sounds cool. This has a nice mechanical shutter with a max shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, which is awesome for really bright conditions if you're using a fast lens like this 50mm f1.4, for example. My Sony, for example, maxes out at 1/4000th of a second. So sometimes that is an issue in really bright conditions. So my A7 IV, for example, has the 1/8000 max shutter speed, which is nice for those, again, brighter conditions. So I would show you that camera, but that's actually my studio camera. That's very close to comparable to the Z5 II and the Z6 III. In case you guys are wondering, the Sony A7 IV is a more DSLR style camera body. The A7C II is the more compact version of the A7 IV, basically. All right, so just a couple other features that the Z5 II offers is pre-capture. Pre-capture is really cool. So if you're shooting like birds or something like that, and you want to get it like leaving the nest, just as an example, you can enable pre-capture, and that can record at up to 30 frames per second, and it can go up to 1 second, basically, like back in time. So in other words, once you hit the shutter button, you'll have a second before you press the shutter button that'll be captured. So that's what pre-capture is, and that's a very powerful feature that the Z5 II offers. Now the Z5 II also has 5-axis sensor stabilization, which is killer. So when hand holding, when walking, for example, it works really good for that, especially when combined with a lens that has the vibration reduction. So the sensor stabe and the vibration reduction work together, and it gives you like extra stabilization. So hand holding at 200mm recording video is possible, and you wouldn't really be able to do that very effectively without, the advanced sensor stabilization. So another cool feature is the 9-type subject detection. So we're talking humans, cats, vehicles, things like that. So it's got up to 9, and you can set it to auto, so it'll automatically pick the subject that it thinks that you're focusing on. So I like that it has the auto option, but you can also dial it into specific subjects just to help the autofocus system achieve whatever your goal is. And you just have to remember that this is like tools. These are tools that the camera offers to help you get the results you're looking for, because sometimes the camera will just pick the wrong thing, and that's what these tools are built in for. Another cool feature this camera offers is the linear autofocus responsiveness feature. So when you're focusing manually with lenses, they tend to like accelerate like based on how you turn them, which makes it really hard to be accurate with manual focus, especially if you're doing focus throws. So this offers a linear version for that, which is awesome. So that means like when you rotate the focus ring, it'll be consistent. And I wish all cameras had that built in, and the Z5 Mark II has that. So if you plan on using manual focus lenses, that is a pretty important feature and one worth noting. Now, if you are shooting N-Log, just to let you know, like the more advanced video recording format that will require you to process the footage in like Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve, for example, the base ISO is 800 for the first base, and the second base ISO is 6400, just so you guys are aware. So you do get the 2 base ISOs, which is nice. Now another even more powerful video feature is the NRAW option. So you can record 12-bit NRAW. Processing raw footage is even more complicated than S-Log, but it does offer some other features, like you can adjust the ISO and the white balance and stuff after the fact, sort of thing. If you're like a raw shooter or you want to like experiment with that sort of thing, this does offer 12-bit internal RAW up to 30 frames per second. One other thing I wanted to point out is you can power the camera with the USB-C port, but you do still need to have the battery in there. So for those wondering about battery life, the battery life is excellent on this camera. I was walking around the city like all day long, and the battery like barely went down. It went down like 1 click after like all day using it. I didn't leave it on all day, but I was constantly using it, recording both photos and videos, and the battery never even went to half used. I was shocked. So battery life is excellent on this camera. All right, guys, I just wanted to go over this lens really quick, and then I'm gonna show you some sample photos. So again, this lens does weigh in at 1.5 pounds, so it is quite heavy. It goes for about $900 US, but it's very well built. It has weather sealing. It's got the vibration reduction that we already talked about, and it's got an insane 24 to 200 millimeter full frame range. Now it does have a variable aperture, which means that when you start at 24 millimeter, it's at f4, and as you zoom in, the aperture diaphragm is going to get smaller and smaller. So when you're at 200, it's going to be at f6.3. Now, the reason why that is because the lens would need to be gigantic in order to maintain that f4 throughout the entire range, and it would cost a lot more as well. So to keep it like fairly small and lightweight and compact, manufacturers put that variable aperture in there. So that's what that's about. Now we have this customizable control ring here, which is really cool. So you could set this to aperture, for example, if you wanted to. And the front of this has a 67 millimeter filter thread. It's got a minimum focus distance of about 1.5 feet or 50 centimeters. It's got a 7-blade rounded diaphragm aperture in there, which is nice for the background rendering out of focus areas, as you'll see in a second. And just in case you're wondering, it also has 19 elements in 15 groups, but it's got really high quality glass elements in there to like correct for like fringing and corner sharpness and flaring and all sorts of stuff like that. It also has the really highly advanced lens coatings to, again, help with flaring and stuff like that. So this is a really high quality lens. You might think it's a little bit expensive at first if you're not aware, but it's honestly not that bad when you consider the range that this lens has and the quality that it produces throughout that range and the features that the lens offers, so weather sealing and so forth. So just keep that in mind. All right, guys, so we're going to go over the real-world photos that I took with the 24 to 200 millimeter and the Nikon Z5 II. So let's just get right into it here. So when I first got this, day one, actually, I went to my buddy's food truck here, Up and Smoke food truck. They got absolutely delicious barbecue, and I took some photos of the chicken wings for him. Now, I was in JPEG mode here. On the top left, guys, is where the EXIF data is. So I shot JPEG at first because I always want to see what the camera can do like straight off the camera. Then I switched over to RAW quality because I prefer to enhance my photos in Adobe Lightroom Classic, which is the program I'm using right now. But again, I just want to show you what JPEG straight off the camera will do. And you can see here the colors render fantastic in my opinion. Sharpness and clarity of the 24 to 200 is excellent. And you can see, just look at how good these wings look. And again, the minimum focus distance on this lens is quite good, so I could zoom right in and get these very, very highly detailed close-ups of these wings. So anyways, I was just looking at a traffic cone here, and I was zoomed in at 200 millimeter looking down. So the front of the lens was very close to the cone, and that is the minimum focus distance. And what's so great about having a very close minimum focus distance is shots like this you can get. Otherwise, I would have to be way further away from the top of the cone, and it just wouldn't look as cool. So because I'm able to get so close, the cone like renders out and becomes all blurry. And you can see just the detail on the top of this old cone. It's like cracking, but the sharpness is excellent. And then if you look, you could see like the fall off of focus. So it just gives you that cool like 3D like pop sort of look. So anyways, a couple more snapshots here. I just went up to this Ellenville Outlook. It's a pretty cool spot, and it was hazy out, so I just thought it was a cool opportunity for some sample photos. It's at 150 millimeter. This is at 200 millimeter, and I really just like the layering of these mountains in the distance. So it's just like a cool layering sort of shot. Now I'm down in New York City for the Bild event here, so the rest of these photos until the end are going to be in New York City. And just looking around the city is just so much fun. There's so much cool stuff to take photos of. This is actually a roof tank for water, so they actually make them out of wood. This is a really cool structure. I can't remember what it's called, but it's in the city, and it's like a bunch of staircases that you can walk up, and it's just a very cool structure. I didn't get a chance to go over there. Just a snapshot there at 150 millimeter while we were on our way to the Bild event and hanging out with a bunch of awesome friends. Tyler Edwards, Josh Satin, Mark Weimels, and Jeff Fagan. And Flo also. I can't remember Flo's last name. But check out this shot. There's a guy working here. This is at 200 millimeter. He was really far away. I actually cropped in on this one a little bit. But I thought it was a pretty cool composition, just the way that those lines and stuff looked. Now, look at these guys at 200 millimeter, and then take a look at 53 millimeter. So I was shooting through a fence and was able to get this shot. And then when I zoomed out, I just wanted you guys to see that there was actually a fence in front. So it's pretty cool how you can shoot through a fence with a telephoto zoom lens and get such a good result like that, you know? So think sports and stuff like that. Now here's just a shot on the street, 75mm versus 200, same location. Street vendor there. Now looking down the street, 190mm. I just love the way that the street renders when you look down the street, especially when you're using that telephoto zoom. You get like this telephoto compression effect, and that's what this looks like. Now looking up at this cool building, 42mm. Now inside the Jacob Javits Center, looking out, this is actually that same building that you just saw here, but I'm looking at it through the glass here from the BH Photo Bild event. And I just like the way that this renders. This lens really has excellent quality. Now, this was outside the Jacob Javits Center, and I just love the way that this old and new building kind of it's just old and new, like in the same shot. I'm not sure what the right word is for that. Juxtaposition maybe or something. The image quality is very, very good on this zoom lens. Here's a couple more shots shooting off the rooftop at our hotel, and it was very fun to just zoom in on stuff. There was just so much stuff to look at, so I was just pointing and shooting. Now look at this. This looks like total chaos, but in reality I was shooting down in between two buildings, and you can just see all the different balconies, the windows, all the different air conditioners. There's like somebody's like porch here, and this is like rooftop vents, but also like a porch. Or a deck. It's just so interesting, the hustle and bustle or whatever you want to call it of the city. Now here's just one from the rooftop, and it was so foggy and cloudy that you couldn't even see the top of the buildings. So we just decided to have some beers instead. And here's one at 83mm versus 200. So you can see, just look at how the background renders. Like back here, you see all those colors and stuff, and it's the out of focus area looks really good. But watch when I zoom into 200mm. And I'm much more at the minimum focus distance now. So now the background is really blurry, and you can get excellent 3D pop at 200mm when you're close to subjects like this. Now just a couple of street scenes I thought looked pretty cool. Now check this out, guys. This is this awesome truck here that was doing some work, but I just wanted to show you 200mm versus 94mm versus 24mm. So this is all from the same exact location, and this is what you can do with such an awesome, versatile zoom lens like this. So there you have it. Now just a couple of portrait shots, 200mm here. These people were dressed up in these outfits. More of a wide angle shot here of the street scene. Now here's some Times Square action. And so this is at 24mm, and then zoomed in on this robot character guy walking around. You could see this looks like a nice portrait, nice background separation and blur. Here's just a sculpture here. A couple more snapshots. This one I really like. So this was like a fake replica of the Statue of Liberty, and I just love the way the telephoto compression renders this versus how blurry the background is. So this is what 3D pop looks like in my mind, because the background's blurry, the subject is nice and sharp, and you're getting that separation, and it just rendered awesome in my opinion. I love the way that this photo came out, and the optical quality, again, of this lens is excellent. Now, I thought this was an interesting image. I survived my trip to NYC, and then the shirt next to it, you know, it's just pretty funny. So I thought this looked cool in black and white. The building over here had a very cool reflection on it that just rendered pretty interesting. And I just thought the punchy black and white was a cool option for this image. Now here's just a couple more street scenes at 30mm, this one. So vertical composition is pretty cool and getting some nice results like this. Down in Central Park, took a couple of snapshots. They got this awesome pickleball area. You can see the city in the background. Just a couple flowers here. Couple more cityscapes looking up. This one I kind of tried to frame the, cityscape with foliage. We got some ponds there in Central Park. Couple more. Now here's another one where I focused on the leaves here because I wanted to show you how the building out of focus area renders. And you can see it looks quite cool. 200mm again. Here's my buddy Jeff. He was actually playing around with his red Raptor. It's like an awesome cinema camera. Here's just somebody playing on their phone, but I thought it rendered quite well. This is at 105mm, and you can see that background separation is very good. at 105 millimeter, even at f6.3. Here's another one of this gentleman riding a bicycle. I actually focused on him to show you how the street scene would render. And then I took one of the street scene so you can just see just how much chaos is going on. But when you focus on a subject like this, it kind of softens the chaos quite a bit. Here's just one of the church steeple peeking through there. Now this is the Rockefeller Center area. You might recognize this inner area is where the ice skating rink is in the winter, but in the summer they turned it into a nice seating area to hang out in and stuff. And just a couple different zoom ranges here. A couple more snapshots, some street signs. It's my buddy Jeff again. Nice little portrait of him. Oh, this was cool. This was like the Atlas guy, I think he's called. Now here's just one of St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is actually a panorama that I combined. So it was two separate images, and I just combined them to try to get the whole church in one shot. Here's another one, just at 24 millimeter at a different angle. Now here I just wanted to show you, this is 24 millimeter and from the hotel window. And then when I zoomed in to 200 millimeter, you could see just that huge range. So if I zoom out, what I was zoomed into is this area over here. So at 200 millimeter, look what that looks like. And then 24 millimeter. It's pretty incredible, the actual zoom range this lens offers. I just want to show you that quick. Radio City Music Hall. Here's just a public library, and I thought this symmetrical shot looked pretty cool. You had a lion out front posing. Now here's just some sun flare looking up at the lion just to show you how that renders. The lens handles it quite well. It's like, what am I looking at there? You know, but it's actually glass building. Now we checked out Grand Central Station Terminal, and it's just a beautiful building outside and in. As you can see here, just looking at the inside, it's just absolutely awesome architecture. And here's a couple of shots. I actually had the camera sitting on the railing, and I did a slower exposure. You can see here, this is a 3-second exposure. And here's just another one. This is a 1.6-second exposure, so I slowed it down a little bit to try to capture a little bit more of the subtle motion. And this is the one I settled on. I like this one the best, I think, out of all three. And this was a 2-second exposure, and I just love how this guy here was like perfectly still. Same thing with this dude with a backpack. So you get the movement, and then you get the, you know, frozen action as well. Now here, just from the rooftop of our hotel, they had this sky deck, which is insane. I really wanted to get here, but didn't have a chance. The weather wasn't that great. But this is really, really high. You'll see in a second when I zoom out. This is the sky deck up here, this little triangle. So that's how high that is. And we were on like the 30th floor where we were. So this is at like, I don't even know, 100th floor or something. But you could look down on the city from that sky deck, and this is what it looks like. And at 200 millimeter, you actually see the people. A couple more city snapshots here. Here's the Empire State Building, and just zoomed in on the steeple top part there. And here's just one of the cityscape itself, and there's just so much interesting stuff to look at. Here's zoomed in on another older, like brownstone style building. And this one I thought was pretty cool because there was this guy here on the balcony and there was someone here in the window. And then we had a nice sunset one night, which just came out pretty darn good. And here's one just zoomed out a little more. So this is 200 versus 120. And here's just zoomed in, getting, you know, more towards dusk. And you can see in the buildings some of the light on there. There's a little bit higher ISO here. So this is ISO 11,400. And you can see just how good it looks, even though it's at that high ISO. Here's Flo's awesome Hasselblad he was using. Really, really nice camera that he had there. This is actually the A7R5 that Mark Wiemels was using. And this is another Blackmagic camera that Flo was using. It's a cinema camera. And here's just Josh and Flo and Mark taking some photos of the awesome cityscapes here. Now zoomed in, look at this, guys. This is ISO 40,000. And this looks really good, if you ask me, for ISO 40,000. So like I said, these newer cameras are so good with the high ISO. It's really not that big of a deal, and you can fix the ISO very effectively now. I'll show you that in a second here when we get to a really high ISO image. So this is ISO 64,000. Let me just zoom in here to show you the noise. So yeah, this is definitely very noisy, but check this out. If I go into development mode here, and I hit this denoise button here, right here, watch this. Do you see how much that fixes it? Look at that. This is before and this is after. So that's incredible how good this new noise reduction technology is. So I'm just going to click enhance and then it's going to do the render. And then I will show you what this looks like after it's done. All right, so now the render is complete. And if I zoom in here, look at this. It cleaned it up incredibly well. You could see like the texture on the shirt and everything. And again, it doesn't look like fantastic, like a lower ISO image, but for ISO 64,000 cleaned up, this is totally usable, in my opinion. Like you could print this, you could use this photo, and it's obviously higher than ideal. Like I wouldn't want to use such a high ISO all the time, but just know that you can. And in lower light at 200 millimeter, this is kind of where I needed to have it to get that nice sharp shot. So the high ISO performance on this sensor camera combination is very good, is really what I wanted to get at here. And it was getting very dark, so very low light now. Just a couple more images here. I like how this one came out. This looks really good. It's at ISO 2000, 32 millimeter. Here's another one of Jeff. Now here's one in daylight. This is actually when I was on my way home, and I thought this came out good. They have this like viewing observation thing here with binoculars or whatever, and the city is in the background. So I just really like the way that this rendered. And here's zoomed in at 200 millimeters, looking at the George Washington Bridge with the city in the background. And there was actually a helicopter flying over, so I took a quick snapshot of that. Now here at 24 millimeter, this is what it looks like from where I was standing. And then we zoom in here to about 80 millimeter here. And then here's 100 millimeter. And again, here's 200 millimeter cropped more like a pano. I thought this looked pretty cool. Kind of looks like a smiley face in front of the city. And here's the full frame 200 millimeter. This is a RAW file, by the way, guys. I switched to RAWs. It's .nef a while back. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. And here is just some snapshots from the other day here. I just like the way that these flowers look when they pop out of the lily pads like that. Here's another one. And here's just a pretty cool reflection shot. I thought this looked kind of cool. And here's just one more. So that about wraps up the sample photos for the 24 to 200 millimeter. So now we got the 50 millimeter f1.4, which is a fast, lightweight, walk-around prime lens. And 1.4 means the max aperture. So that means that aperture in there is going to open up and give you a lot of light. And you can see on the back here just how huge that rear lens element is. And this lens also has weather sealing. It's got that rubber gasket on the back, just like the other 24 to 200 millimeter. And it also has this nice lens hood here. I'll just pull that off for a second. It also has this control ring, which is customizable, and it has a really nice focus ring. And remember that linear focus feature that the camera offers is really nice for when using in manual focus. So this is what it looks like when it's on the camera. All right, so as far as the weight goes, this does weigh in at about 15 ounces or 422 grams. So it's a pretty beefy lens overall, I would say, but the build quality is excellent. Focus ring feels great. It also has this customizable ring, which I really like. So you could set that to the aperture, for example, if you want. So looking at the front, we have a 62 millimeter filter thread there, and I highly recommend getting like a UV filter or something on there so you can like protect your investment. You know, just in case you bump the front of your lens on something, you know, it'll help protect in that regard. You definitely do not want to scratch the front lens element. Same thing goes for the 24 to 200. I'll have those linked below, guys. I already did the research and I found some good ones for you, so highly recommend getting those just to protect your investment. And the lens hood will also help protect, as you can see here, but you can still get in there with something and bump the glass. So just keep that in mind. This lens is pretty much silent. Same thing with the 24 to 200. So when you're focusing, you're not going to hear like the focus motor or the focus like struggling or anything like that. So it's pretty much silent when recording video. And that's a very nice feature. It's very important to somebody like me who records video a lot and does not like hearing that on the camera audio, you know. So if you're doing on-camera audio with a mic on the top of a camera, you can definitely hear when the lens makes noise. So it's really nice when it doesn't make noise, and both of these lenses work great in that regard. So as far as the minimum focus distance goes, this lens is about 14.5 inches or 37 centimeters, so it's pretty good. You can get pretty close to stuff, which is great for for magnification. All right, let's get into the sample photos with the 50mm f1.4 lens. Now, again, I was shooting in JPEG when I first started using the Z5 Mark II. So these are some of the first shots I took. So here's a shot of my daughter Layla here, and you can see just how sharp, incredible sharpness on this lens, great for portraits. And here's just one of my dad. Here's one of Jace. And here's just one of my mom. We were all enjoying the moment. We were going out for birthday dinner. Here's one of Jasmine, my parents' dog, and you can see just how sharp it renders. It looks great, and the background rendering is very, very blurry. That's what that f1.4 very fast aperture gets you. So 50mm at very close focus distance at f1.4 is going to completely blur out the background way more than the 24-200 lens will do. So I really enjoy using fast aperture prime lenses for this exact reason. Check out this portrait of Jace. This came out amazing. This was actually in the restaurant that we were in. I just had him lean on the wall here, and you can just see that background render. Looks fantastic. Very good 3D pop. Now here we're at the dinner table here, and you can see just incredible rendering on this glass of frosty water. And here's just one of a Pilsner glass with some beer in there. Now looking down at the glass, I actually focused on the foam here on the top of the glass. This is pretty much minimum focus distance. And just look at the menu and how the table and the glass renders. This is like killer 3D pop, and I just love the way that this renders. It's awesome for food and beverage photography, portraits, stuff like that. Here's a picture of my food. Here's just some bread on the table, and I got this killer gnocchi with the burrata cheese on there and bolognese sauce. It was fantastic. Again, JPEG straight off the camera. This is what you can expect. The Nikon colors are really good. Definitely enjoying the way that they render. Now, this is down in New York City. We were trying to find some pizza, and luckily my buddy Dave Manning was there, and he knew where all the good pizza spots were. So he brought us to this place, which was very good. I can't remember the name of it, otherwise I would mention it. But the pizza was excellent. And here's my buddy Mark. And you can see, just look at that background render. This is at the pizza restaurant. It just looks so good. And here's my buddy Josh Satin. You can see just this rendering. Look how out of focus his hands are. But, you know, he's nice. Just really good, like, depth rendering with a lens like this. Perfect for portraits and stuff. Now, this is Dave's camera. He was using the Fuji there. And we stopped and grabbed a couple of frosty beverages at this cool bar. And I always like taking pictures of the taps and stuff. It just always renders cool with a lens like this. This is my buddy Tyler. We were having a great time here. I really like the way that this shot came out. Here's just one more. And here's just one of a beer on the counter, more at the minimum focus distance. And this just looks incredibly awesome. The rendering and everything, 3D pop is just off the charts. Now here's just one of the Empire State Building from the roof. So now I was able to get much lower ISO images at night because of the much faster aperture. So because the aperture is so much faster, I was able to get much lower ISO images with the 50mm lens in lower light conditions. So these came out a little bit cleaner looking and just phenomenal rendering in my opinion. Really like the way this looks. Here's another one of the sky deck here. You can see the people up there. Here's just one more. And it was really, really hazy the first night we were out. These are actually from the first night. Oh, guys, check this out. This is how Amazon delivers packages in the city. They have these insane, I don't even know what you call it. It's like a bicycle hybrid thing. It has pedals, but it's got a motor in there and 4 wheels and stuff. And it's pretty cool. They could, you know, navigate in the city. Now, just looking through some windows here at this awesome display of pizza, you can see how this lens does, and I really like the way that this shot came out. Here's just one of those blow-up things that are always fun to look at. Some city shots here, looking down the streets. You can see it looks really good. Here's just a guy on his bike here getting ready to go. Here's one of Tyler and Josh in the foreground. You could just see that depth of field play here, how blurry Josh is. Tyler sharp, this gentleman blurry. So very narrow depth of field here with the 50mm f1.4, which I pretty much shot at f1.4 the entire time. Now here's just one of a, you know, just like one of those convenience carts where you can get like gum and lottery tickets and, you know, beverages and stuff like that. We went out to this very good restaurant, Italian restaurant for dinner here. This is the Italian restaurant. Not even sure how to say it, but it was excellent, I gotta say. Now looking down into the subway, I liked how this rendered. I focused down here so you can just see that depth of field, and just the way it renders looks pretty 3D in my mind. Just a night scene here. Here's an interesting street scene I thought was cool. This guy kind of jumps out as he's coming towards the camera. We got smoke here coming out of the food truck. He's, making hot dogs and stuff. So a lot going on. There's these cool colors up here and just interesting foreground detail. I thought it was a pretty interesting photo. And they have these carts they drive around at night. So you can go for rides if you want. And again, rooftop at night with this lens is just ridiculous. As you can see here, the rendering is killer. Here's one of Josh and Flo taking some shots of each other, and also just a cool view. Here's one more. You can see they were having a good time. Here's one of Mark watching, and just look at this render, guys. The background is just ridiculous, and the sharpness is fantastic. ISO 8000, so it was very low light, even though it looks like it's brighter than it actually was. And here's just one of this IPA here on the roof, and I went for more of a minimum focus distance shot here just to exploit the bokeh balls to show you just what this lens can do in a situation like this. Here's just one more. And here's a couple more snapshots. Some garbage overflowing. Here's a really good one of Josh down in Times Square. I really like the way that this shot came out. And this is a pretty interesting shot of Jeff with a bus in the background and then buildings even further. He's sporting that cinema camera down in the city. Here's another one, nice city scene. Another one of Jeff going for it. And this just shows you the pure chaos of Times Square. Like, there were so many people. It was just walking through like hordes of people, and just a lot of busyness going on. So I thought this shot did a good job. I just raised the camera up a little bit so you can see the crowd a little better. Here's one of Flo. I don't know what he's shooting, but I'm sure it's a killer frame. Now, I just actually set the camera to out of focus so you can see what it looks like out of focus. And the rendering is just outstanding, in my opinion. And here's the same scene focused. So again, out of focus, focused. So pretty incredible how you can do. Now, they actually had some street dancers and stuff down there. It was fun to watch for a few minutes. Now, this guy actually looked like Doc from, Back to the Future, and he had a DeLorean here. And looks like he was actually down on his luck at the moment, but really cool DeLorean he had, and he's playing the part there. Now, here's just some girl on the street, but I thought this came out pretty good with the background rendering and foreground, drawing the eye in. So, pretty interesting shot. Not the best pose, but what are you going to do? It's just a candid shot. Same thing with this one. Guy chilling in the back of this cool Mustang. Now, here's one where I slowed the shutter speed down to half a second, and I was hand holding. This officer was, watching over things, making sure things were on the up and up. And I decided to slow the shutter speed down to try to get a cool capture. And this one, I think, was the best out of all of them. It was like a taxi going by, and I thought it came out really good. So I actually edited this one a little bit to try to get it to look a little bit better. And here's just the other shots I took, just so you can see. I was actually rapid firing, so I took like 10 shots to try to get the best one. Here's just one of Mark's hand, and again, just showing you that background depth of field play you can get. And this one I focused out of focus at varying amounts so you can see how the render changes. So check this out. All the way out of focus, a little bit less, and then now that's what the actual shot looks like. So pretty cool how you can see how the lens behaves, I find that very interesting anyway, so hopefully you guys do too. Now, I just the other day went back to my buddy's food truck, and he had a new flavor. This is garlic parm buffalo. Absolutely outstanding wings. And here's a couple more close-ups that I took for him. And you can see they just look absolutely fantastic. I had so much fun using this camera. I did not miss my Sony a7C II. I was just enjoying this. And every time I used it, it was like just fun. It's just a great camera at the end of the day. Like, of course, I would love to have the more advanced features. Higher resolution sensor would be cool to have and stuff like that. But you don't need it, Like, this kit right here, to be honest with you, is really all you need for almost anything. The 50mm prime is fast, it's accurate, it renders beautifully. You can get killer portraits with this, great close-ups of food. You can record awesome like vlog style stuff if you're using like a tripod out in the field and get those nice blurry backgrounds. The 24-200 is like a do everything all-in-one solution, and it works great at pretty much all ranges. So what a great kit, I gotta say. So as far as the cost goes, the Z5 II is $1,700 for just the camera body. With the 24-50 millimeter kit lens, it goes for about $2,000. So that would be like your best value to get, you know, just a lens that will work, and it's a good lens, it's a good kit lens. Now with the 24-200, it's gonna be more like $2,500 with this kit lens. And then if you add the 50 millimeter 1.4, that's another $500. So this is like a $3,000 kit right here. But this pretty much covers all your bases. And like I said, you could do portraits, you could do street photography, food photography, vlogging if you want. I mean, this is great for traveling. You have telephoto zoom, so you could even do sports with this lens, you know, for your kids that are out there on the field playing soccer or whatever. Just a great solution. Take portraits with the 50 millimeter. So overall, I would say this is a fantastic package, turnkey solution, full frame sensor coverage, and the fun factor is off the charts with this camera. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is this creative button here on the top that I forgot to mention earlier. So this will just allow you, if you press this, to get into like different creative modes. So they have like all these different presets that'll give you like different looks. So if you're one of those people that likes to just play around and get different looks and stuff, definitely hit this button and you can go through and check all that stuff out. Now, I will explain that in detail in my beginner's guide that is coming out soon. So if you want to know way more on how to use this camera and all the nuances and the features, video settings and all that type of stuff, be sure to check out my beginner's guide and you will learn all that stuff in that comprehensive, pretty long form video. So all right, guys, I really appreciate you checking out my review. If you like the review, please consider giving me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button as well if you want to see more reviews like this. Also, in the description area, I will have all the gear I was using and recommended like lens filters like I was talking about earlier and stuff like that. That stuff will all be linked below in the description area. I really appreciate the support, guys, and I will catch up with you next time. All right, guys, take care.